Imagine a scene. A man walks into a bar, looks around at everyone and thinks, I'm probably the smartest person here. The problem is he can barely hold a coherent conversation. And yet, he speaks with overwhelming confidence. No doubt, no shame, no fear. Meanwhile, in the corner, someone genuinely intelligent stays quiet, mentally correcting every sentence before speaking. And there lies one of the strangest paradoxes of the human mind. The less a person knows, the more convinced they are that they know everything. That phenomenon has a name. It's called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And yes, you've probably seen it everywhere. In politics, in business, on social media, or in that person who watched 3 YouTube videos and now thinks they've decoded the universe. But what makes this truly fascinating is that it didn't begin as an internet meme. It began in a university. In 1999, at Cornell University in the United States, 2 psychologists named David Dunning and Justin Kruger started studying something deeply unsettling about human behavior. They wanted to understand why some people, despite being clearly incompetent at something, seemed extraordinarily confident in themselves. Their study was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, and its conclusions became so influential that years later they received the Ig Nobel Prize, an award given to unusual but surprisingly meaningful scientific research. What they discovered was disturbing. The least competent people in a subject were not only making more mistakes, they were also incapable of recognizing that they were making them. In other words, the same lack of skill that made them incompetent also prevented them from realizing their own incompetence. A perfect mental trap. To prove it, they conducted several experiments with university students. The students were tested in logic, grammar, and humor. And something fascinating happened. The people with the worst scores believed they had performed far better than they actually had. Some students ranked among the bottom 10 or 15% and still believed they were above average. Meanwhile, the truly intelligent participants tended to underestimate themselves. Because the more you know, the more aware you become of everything you don't know. It's the exact moment when someone stops saying, "This is easy," and starts saying, "This is far more complex than I imagined." And here is where things become even more interesting. Very often, less intelligent people appear more charismatic, more fearless, and sometimes even more successful. Why? Because they have fewer mental barriers. They don't feel as much shame. They don't fear embarrassment as much. They don't constantly question themselves. They speak even when they don't understand. They give opinions even when they know nothing. They jump into situations they are completely unprepared for. And that confidence, even when built on ignorance, can become incredibly persuasive. Meanwhile, highly intelligent people often do the exact opposite. They overanalyze. They consider every possibility. They fear being wrong. They correct themselves before speaking. That's why truly brilliant people can sometimes appear insecure while mediocre people seem like natural leaders. Ignorance can create a kind of artificial courage, because when someone doesn't understand the complexity of something, they also fail to perceive the danger of being wrong. There's a quote often attributed to Charles Darwin that captures this idea perfectly. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than knowledge. And perhaps that explains many things about modern society. Why do false experts thrive on social media? Because algorithms love certainty. A person who has genuinely studied a subject for years usually speaks with nuance. They say things like, "It depends," "It's complicated," "There are exceptions." Meanwhile, someone who discovered the topic yesterday confidently says, "This is the absolute truth." And that false certainty looks like leadership, even when it's completely empty. And we've all met someone like that. The coworker giving economic advice who doesn't understand taxes. The aggressive spiritual guru. The investor who lost money but still acts like a financial genius. Or the classic know-it-all who gives opinions on medicine, quantum physics, and geopolitics all during the same dinner. But careful. This video is not about laughing at other people, because the real danger of the Dunning-Kruger effect is believing that only idiots suffer from it. That would be falling into the exact same trap. We all have areas where we believe we understand more than we actually do. All of us. The difference between a wise person and a foolish one is not that one knows everything, it's that one understands their limits. That's why great scientists are often humble. Because the deeper you go into any discipline, the larger the ocean of the unknown becomes. And perhaps that's why Socrates said one of the most famous phrases in history. "I know that I know nothing." It wasn't false modesty. It was clarity, because real knowledge destroys arrogance. And maybe that is the most important lesson of all this. Intelligence does not begin when you have all the answers. It begins when you are capable of saying, I might be wrong. Because the more a person learns, the more aware they become of the immensity of what they do not know. And perhaps that is why truly wise people rarely feel the need to shout that they are wise. If you enjoy these kinds of stories where psychology, philosophy, and the mysteries of the human mind come together, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join me for the next documentaries. Because sometimes understanding how the human mind works is the closest thing we have to understanding ourselves. See you in the next video.